getting rid of death of an ego is basically getting rid of everything that you think is you, and that whatever you're left over with, that's who you are. But the beautiful thing, a lot of people are scared of that because they don't know how to identify without being labeled with something. But the beautiful thing about it is once you get rid of all that, the only thing left is love. And it was the most amazing thing. Like, it just brought up all my insecurities that I ever had. It brought it to the surface, put it right in my face. It was one of the scariest things I ever dealt with. But I just remember people being like, just let it go, let it go, let it go, let it go, you know? And after a while, it just went away. It's almost like an Etch-a-Sketch where you have something on there and somebody just slides it and, gets rid of it. Got rid of my ego. All I was left was like this overwhelming feeling of love.
Welcome everyone to It's More Than Black or White. It's your hosts, Paul and Brian. Brian, how you doing today, bro?
Man, feeling good. Feeling good. A little crappy weather outside, but you know what? My attitude trumps that.
Yeah, listen, man. Your attitude is always tip top. I think my attitude would be towards the weather outside. I'd be freaking. This is a great time where I would usually do some psychedelics. Just walk around in the ice and snow. Speaking of which. Yeah, you know what? We're gonna go over. I want to work on my segues, but we're gonna go over today's psychedelics. Okay. I got brought B when you and I, it was kind of a co-agreement on this. And I'm realizing that as I'm recording this, I have a little bit of yeah, man. I'm a little clenched up right now, man. I'm like, I'm uncertain as to why, as the reason why. I guess because
you feel a little stressed.
Yeah, man. I'm like, oh my God, we're about to talk about psychedelics, and this is gonna go on record for life.
Well, either people hate it or they love it, or so it's like so a couple people are gonna look at us and being like, man, these guys are off the rocker, which is fine.
Heathens. No,
I'm a little fucked up as most people, I'm okay with that,
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons. I think that's one of the reasons we get along so well. It's because we're both fucked up, and it just is what it is. So listen, we joke around and we like to have fun, and also our main mission is to bring you all information that is more than the traditional health and well-being stuff that's taught out there. So being Brian and I really thought it was necessary for us to talk about this because we both have had experiences, and we both have talked about how much these experiences have adjusted and altered our trajectory in life. So what we're going to work with today is we're going to talk about psychedelics. And if this is the first time you're hearing about it, well, first of all, if this is the first time you're coming to our podcast, welcome, and welcome to the first podcast being about psychedelics. If you're a repeating subscriber or visit to this platform and to our words, thank you so much for supporting and being here with us every week as we share these messages and share these concepts that are helping you towards your best health and your best self. So, Brian, when you hear the word psychedelics, what comes to mind for you?
Now it's different than when I first heard about it. I was like, oh man, we're just gonna get blown out of a different stratosphere. We're gonna be tripping, and we're gonna have a good time, and hopefully I come out of it okay. I think that's what most people are. They're worried about how they're gonna handle it.
Yeah, bro. Yeah.
And now, like, fast forward, I've been doing psychedelics probably since like 2010. So almost like going on 13, 14 years now. When I think of psychedelics, I look at it as I'm about to expand my mind. I'm about to learn something about myself.
Yeah, bro.
I'm excited, and it's not always amazing, quote unquote, trips I go through. Sometimes it's really painful and sometimes it's scary as shit. But every time I get out of it, I'm a better person. I understand the person I am. I understand a lot about the world,
Brother, man, thank you for that, man, because even in your describing like what it is for you, it brings up a lot for me. that I'm starting to recognize that I had perceptions myself about psychedelics. And people, as you're listening to this, I want to set a standard, set a ground, a base for what when we're talking about psychedelics, what we're talking about are substances that will change your perception, mood, or consciousness. A lot of psychedelics, like Brian and I are going to dig deeper into it, but in our society, psychedelics can be viewed in either like this sacred object that is meant to elevate consciousness and connect with ancestors in other realms, or it could be this substance that says I'm just gonna get fucked up and not even feel my face and piss on myself and eat some shitty food. So
Yeah.
there's two different, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's two different perceptions to this.
You know.
The thing that's important to note is, and you can even write this in the comment, is what's the perception of psychedelics for you? You have a pen and paper handy, and start to really just like, so let's start to dissect what the perception of psychedelics is for you. Because as I mentioned, a lot of psychedelics back in the day were more along for ritual purposes. When I think of psychedelics, I think a lot of like what you were thinking, man. Like it's two different versions now. Because when I was younger, I was a weed smoker since like late high school, bro. And
Mm.
I've had times when I'm off weed and off weed. I have times when I don't smoke weed, sometimes when I do. But when I was in my late 20s, that's when I really started to experiment heavily with drugs. I had a friend that I reconnected with. He lived in Florida for a while. He got really familiar with a lot of the drugs like Molly, and that's when first time I took mushrooms and acid. And when I bartended, I wouldn't call cocaine a psychedelic, even though it made me talk too damn much. But like a lot of these things, like we would do these like LSD to like epic proportions just to get banged up, and there was really no benefit until something shifted for me in one of my experiences, which had me perceive psychedelics in a completely different way, man. So I'm curious, hey man, like what are you can you share, like I'm just thinking, be like dang, like what was your introduction to psychedelics?
Yeah. So my introduction was like, first of all, like a little bit of my background. Like, I didn't have my first sip of alcohol until I was 26. Just like,
Really, bro?
yeah,
What?
yeah. I didn't do any drugs. I didn't do anything. And
I
then,
feel like I don't know you. Like what?
yeah, yeah. And then what most people go with through alcohol, I went through that with probably my late 20s, early 30s, and I kicked that phase. And like, I like drinking every once in a while. Maybe like,
Yeah,
me and my girl, we have like maybe a bottle of wine every week. We share with
yeah,
dinner, just like a couple glasses. But I'm not really big into drinking anymore. Honestly, psychedelics changed that in me. Like I never really craved it, but a
yeah.
little bit of my background was, my dad pretty much wasn't in the picture growing up, and my mom worked 7 days a week. She worked over 100 hours a week for almost 19 years, and
Jeez.
she would be gone at 9 o'clock at night. She wouldn't come home the next day, and I had a younger sister, so I couldn't really go out and party. My part of my responsibility at that age was I had to watch my sister, so I didn't do
Yeah,
any parties or anything like that. And my dad was a bad alcoholic. He basically drank himself to death, and everyone's like, "Oh, it runs in your genetic and everything like that." So that kind of like scared me a little bit. And I was like, I don't want to drink, you
yeah,
know. And then, by the time I got like, was in college and I started doing all this other stuff, and then like I had no desire to ever really do it. And one day I just like, I remember when I was 26, I was hanging out down to Jenkinson's, and all of a sudden, I was like, you know what, fuck this, let's do this. Like, like 10 shots later, went
yeah. You're
overboard.
like,
That was it, man.
it's a wrap.
But for like 4 or 5 years, I drank a lot, because I was going through that phase, and I liked the way I felt when I was drinking. I felt more confident in myself. I
Yeah,
didn't like the way I felt the next day, but I would walk up to girls and just be like, "Hey, how you doing?" Like stuff I
yeah,
would never do before. But I
yeah,
also knew that wasn't the real me. It was just kind of like It was like alcohol was giving me, this overwhelming confidence that I didn't have it unless I was doing it, and I knew that wasn't good. So
yeah,
I kind of weaned myself off that a little bit. And then I started getting more into a holistic aspect of health and wellness. And I started being a lot around a lot of like gurus and yogis and everything like that. And I really liked the way they thought. I
Yeah.
really liked the way they handled life and took on the challenges of life. And I noticed that they were doing a lot of psychedelics. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to expand my consciousness. So I never did any
Yeah.
psychedelics for the point of getting like, hey, let's get fucked up kind of thing. I
Right.
always did it because I wanted to expand my consciousness. I want to learn more about myself. And I've read a lot of books about all these cultures and civilizations that did psychedelics a lot and
Yeah.
how they were just like some of the most peaceful people.
Mm.
So I really wanted to kind of get into that and then
Mm.
start expanding. And I like trying things. I like trying things that are especially a little taboo
Yeah.
so like like my thing, if the government doesn't want me doing it, I'm like, all right, where do I sign up? Kind of thing. I'm
You're
like,
such
all
a
right.
rebel, Brian.
Yeah.
Such a rebel.
How do I subscribe to this membership program here,
Yes, man.
That was how I kind of that's how I kind of got into it. We flew out a shaman that controlled everything. Every time I've done a psychedelic journey, I mean, beside mushrooms, I've always had like a shaman, but we've always had somebody that can control the situation.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
And yeah, it was a beautiful, beautiful. If done correctly, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
it
You
really
know,
is, man. It really is. It's first of all, thank you for that, bro. Thank you for sharing that. Because I think there's gonna be people that'll resonate with your story. And it's wild, man. I never knew that about you, that you started drinking that late. And I really dig like getting to know you over the years. I really understand your background on how you've always treated the medicine sacred.
yeah.
Like since I've known you, we've talked about it. You've always viewed the medicine as sacred. And what meant like people probably be like, medicine, man, we're talking about psychedelics.
Hmm.
Well, I'm glad you asked that because a lot of times from a ritual perspective, psychedelics are seen as medicine. Okay, so even in spiritual communities, shamans, like when you work with plant medicine, they're not like, hey, we're gonna give you these psychedelics. They're doing a lot of rituals, even how they gather the resources for these materials that are gonna change and alter your state of consciousness and your perception of mood. It's a lot, the majority of the time is done in a very ethical and sacred and ritualistic way so that the energies around this plant medicine are designed to take you on a journey for what the medicine is going to give you or for what your intention is.
Yeah.
It's interesting, man, because as you were talking about this, I'm thinking about my own perspective and journey. And I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. So like, I was sneaking drinks and smoking weed at a younger age because I wanted to be rebellious and I was sick of going to damn church all the damn time and knocking on people's doors and them acting like they weren't there. I
Yeah.
know it's probably some people listening too. Anyway, so I've always had this thing about like, drugs are bad. No, no. So when I was going through this like time in my late 20s when my friend Sasha was like, you gotta try this. And I remember it just blew my mind. Like it gave me a different feel. I had this feeling like I was able to let go, very similar to how you were talking about with drinks. Like I found that like alcohol, like again, like very similar to your dad. My dad he just loved the drinks, man, and I loved them too. I've had like some situations with drinks where I've had to stop, and now fortunately, like I don't drink as often. Psychedelics adjusted that for me as well.
Yeah.
And from the time since growing up, I always had so much control. When I got into the psychedelics later on, it was like I could give up control. And it was like I could be something that like I've always had to hold on to. Like, even corporate at that time, I was like, I gotta be buttoned up. But then like I go pop like 6 or 7 grams of mushrooms and I'm like, yo, where's the party at? Is that a tree talking to me? I love you, tree. It's just like,
Yeah.
and then dropping like tabs of acid and stuff and just doing some stupid shit. But like I recognized there was such a stigmatism around it because over history,
Yeah.
um, looking back, if you're going back in history, a lot of these plant medicines were seen as mind alterers. A lot of the greats as far as arts, music, Like a lot of them did psychedelics. Like, some of our favorite musicians like Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, even the Beatles, man, when they took their magic transition into like elevated states of music and the frequencies in their music, it was after they did psychedelics on like a guided journeys, man. So
Yeah.
a lot of the perception there's been attempts to try to control the narrative around it, whether through politicians. Brian and I, before we started talking, we're like the DARE program, like, yo, don't do drugs, man. The black truck with Mr.
Yeah.
T and the red letters on the side,
Mhm.
looked all renegade shit.
Yeah.
Um,
Then
but like,
they had that commercial where an egg being fried, and this is
yeah,
your
this
brain
is your
on
brain
drugs, and
on
everybody's like,
drugs.
ah. Yeah.
Oh my God. But I remember thinking back, I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, that's my brain on drugs. And
Yeah.
then when I got older, I was like, where do I sign up?
I
Where
like
do I
eggs.
sign up?
I like eggs.
I'm like, yeah, that's my brain sizzle sizzle.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, man, because when we talk about even those narratives to try and slow the attempts or the engagement with drugs down, it's always had its place in society.
Sure.
And I think what's very interesting now is that the psychedelics are being used for studies to address things like anxiety, post-traumatic stress syndrome, um, depression, uh,
Yeah.
and even like just adjusting moods. Because a lot of times these psychedelics, they'll bring about feelings of happiness, feelings of trust, feelings of empathy. Um, and what's really interesting is if done correctly, and what I mean by correctly is, Brian, you mentioned it before, like you had a shaman come in.
Yeah.
You had a shaman come in and guide the experience. So I want us, like, while we're talking about the psychedelics, and we talked about any type of substance that can adjust the perception, the mood. I talked about some of the things I did, and I think most of the things that we're talking about now are things like, a lot of the popular ones at the time that's recording, ayahuasca, psilocybin, LSD,
MDMA,
MDMA, uh,
ketamine,
ketamine. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, what am I missing?
Just like
Um,
peyote, stuff like
yeah,
that.
peyote. Yes, there's
Yeah.
5-MeO-D, which is this God molecule that's like starting to gain popularity. So there's a lot of things that are out there that are intended to help you adjust your mood. And Brian, I wanna pivot a small bit because like I know like you and I have had conversations about this, and I'd like us to share with the listeners what was what was an enlightening experience that you got or that you had with psychedelics, and what was the shift that happened for you, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think I talked about this a couple of times on the podcast, but my first time ever doing a psychedelic, I did DMT, methylphenidate.
Mm.
So basically, like if you've never done a psychedelic before, it just like and you jump right into DMT, that's like never hitting a baseball and facing like Roger Clemens. It's like
Damn,
so
the Rocket, bro! You brought the rock.
yeah, man.
Oh,
It was
shucks.
like, DMT, like you've done 5-MeO DMT. So it's like basically you just like you inhale it and all of a sudden, boom, you're not even in your body anymore. You're just like, I
Bye.
remember just being like, a countdown to 3, 2, 1, and the next thing you know, you're shaking hands with God.
Yep.
It's like, but that I had a death of an ego during that. Basically, my ego just diminished. Everything, and basically, an ego is basically anything that you think about yourself. Like if I was going to say, "Hey, Brian, describe," so you're like, "Hey, Brian, describe yourself." I'd be like, "All right, I'm a 44-year-old white male. I love this sport. I go to work, blah blah blah, and all this other stuff." That's not really you.
Right.
So that's just how you identify with yourself. So getting rid of death of an ego is basically getting rid of everything that you think is you, and that whatever you're left over with, that's who you are. But the beautiful thing, a lot of people are scared of that because they don't know how to identify without being labeled with something. But the beautiful thing about it is once you get rid of all that, the only thing left is love. And it just It was the most amazing thing. Like it just brought up all my insecurities that I ever had. It brought it to the surface, put it right in my face. It was
Mm.
one of the scariest things I ever dealt with. And but I just remember people being like, just let it go, let it go, let it go, let it go, you know. And after a while, it just went away. It's almost like an etch a sketch where you have something on there and somebody just slides it and gets rid of it. Got rid of my
That's right.
ego. All I was left was like this overwhelming feeling of love. And I
Mm.
came out of it. I was like, I understand what life is. It's hard to explain. You can't put it in words unless
Yeah.
you've done it.
Yeah.
Um, and you try to share it, but anybody that's ever done psychedelics that had death and ego, they understand where I'm coming from.
But
And you lose about probably like 20% of the seriousness out of your life. You realize that everything is connected. Like your thoughts affects people on the other side of the planet. It might be hard to kind of fathom that, but it's everything just putting good energy out there affects everyone, you know? So that's kind of like my experience, and that's kind of what I left with, you
Bro,
know?
I love you, man. Oh man. You've, yo, I'm remembering. Yeah, you because that was like what, 3 years ago?
Well, DMT I did back in that was the first thing I did back about maybe probably 2010.
Oh, okay. So that was long. Okay, okay. Yeah, so that was a
Yeah.
while. Okay. Man, so people listening, couple things. What did you take away from what Brian was saying? And what with when Brian was describing his experience, what was the resistance to really was there a resistance to really hearing what Brian was saying? The reason I'm asking this is because it was psychedelics, I think, and B, let me know what your thoughts are on this. Psychedelics, I think, is one of those things, that one of those conversation topics that people most likely will resist fully hearing about
Sure.
because there's some sort of filter of like, oh my God, I can't.
Yeah.
I was like,
I would never pressure anybody into doing, even though I think it would be beneficial for them. But you have to have that calling. You have to. I think
got to.
most people, either you have an adventurous spirit, like you and I, we have one, or
Yeah,
later on in life, I think people are more open to it
yeah,
because they get closer to the end and they're
yep,
like, what's my life about? And just to kind of go back, I wanted to share one more story was
yeah,
so we did 2 days. We did one day we did DMT and the next day we did LSD. And I think because you're asking me like what would you get out of it? And I always believed in reincarnation.
yeah,
I never really like had proof, quote unquote, so to speak. So I remember doing LSD, and I remember being with the shaman. He's doing like an astrological like mapping for me and everything like that. And we're
nice.
up on the third floor, right? And after about maybe like I did like a tab underneath my tongue, and probably about an hour later, he's like, "How are you feeling?" I'm like, "I feel fine. Like I don't feel anything." It's like, "All right, let me give you another tab." I'm like, "All
Oh,
right." So in like 15 minutes, I smelled the grapefruit. Right? I'm like, where the hell's that grapefruit? And he's like, you smell grapefruit. So we went downstairs and in the basement, 4 floors below us, somebody was cutting a grapefruit. So it just heightened all your senses. He's like, all right, Brian, this is what I want you to do. I want you to get a piece of paper and a pen, and I want you to take notes, like while you're in there, just kind of write stuff down. And the cool thing about like LSD with me was I wasn't like I can get up, like walk around, be fine, then I can kind of sit down and kind of go off into another world and just kind of
yeah.
like and while I was doing, I was taking notes and blah blah blah. Every time it'll last like 12 hours. Like so, no, don't take it if you got something to do later that
Oh,
day.
hell no. That or
Where
freaking
DMT's like,
psilocybin.
yeah, DMT's like what they call like the lunch break psychedelic. It lasts like 8 to 12 minutes,
Yo,
and you can go back to work, right? But
so true,
LSD was
bro.
like 12 hours. But I remember writing. I have like 4 or 5 pages. I still have these pages, and as I was writing, I looked back into it, and I was like, "What the hell are these words?"
Yeah,
Like, and I'm looking them up, and there were words that were written in Latin. I was writing Latin, and I had no idea what these words were, and they were just flowing beautifully. Like me, I am not a strong writer. I am not a strong writer, but this is like very eloquent the way I was writing, and it wasn't like me. So I asked a shaman, I was like, it's like, how did I write Latin words? He's like, you were tapping into another past life.
Yeah,
You were
man.
tapping into something else. Obviously, in a past life, you spoke Latin, and
Yeah.
I'm like, to me, that just blew my mind. So I left there like there is without a doubt in my mind that there is reincarnation. Whether they believe in reincarnation or everyone lives at the same moment, past, present, future, all in the same. There's other versions of you that have existed or are existing.
This is true.
So,
This is
but
true.
that was my weekend. That was a hell of a weekend, man.
Brother, I'm telling you, man, can you get the facilitator's name? Because I want to check that out myself.
Yeah.
LSD, yes. So psychedelics, they're depending if you're like, hey, I've been interested in trying this. LSD is gonna last, I think, the longest because it's like you're in it. Like LSD is a commitment. Okay. Very similar to mushrooms. Mushrooms, like you're gonna be committed, very much like a strong edible brownie. Like you eat a strong edible brownie, good night, Irene. It's a
Mhm.
wrap. But then you have shorter ones where it's like Special K, I think was what, like 2 or 3 hours? I can't remember. It was like
I've never
it was
done
a
that.
long
Yeah.
time ago.
Yeah.
I wasn't a fan of that one. But like for example, MEO 5 MEOD, like that God molecule, that was tip top. Bruh. So look, so I think I'm asking these questions because people that are listening to this, you may be going through some life situations. You're most likely going through therapy, and if you have yet to go, highly recommended. What's what I'm bringing this up because a lot of the therapy that's happening right now, the progressive therapies are including psychedelics. They're
Mhm.
using it as ways of like basically think of it like a hack, like using psychedelics as a way to hack and rewire yourself. So you're changing your chemistry, you're adjusting your chemistry so you can address either traumas from the past life situations like we've talked about, or just really getting clear on life. Like setting an
Yeah.
intention, getting clear on life. And I think that's important. And the experience that I want to share was actually there's two experiences I'm going to share, right? This time I was at a music festival called All Good. I think it was in West Virginia, was. And I remember the afternoon, we got banged up. I had like three tabs, like we were going stupid. I was like, thank you. I was like, I'm great. I was going around that. So then like it started raining at the concert. Les Claypool was playing from Primus, man. That dude's fucking sick. And I remember I'm like, I see like everything is like doubling. I'm like, oh my God, this is overwhelming. And this can happen. A lot of times people hear psychedelics and they'll always have that one friend that had a bad trip. You know what I'm talking about, Brian? You did
Mhm.
psychedelics? Oh my God. My friend's cousin on my grandmother's third side that lives in Bayonne, they had a bad trip and they never been the same. Yes, everybody I think knows a person like that. I know several of them. Either way, like your mind can mess with you, right? And it
Mhm.
can be a freaking very dark place and difficult place. So what happened? I say this because Les Claypool's playing. Things start double up. I start walking because I'm like, oh shit, I'm thinking I'm gonna go crazy. I'm starting to walk and it's rain, it's muddy. I got sandals on. It's a festival. Come on. So I'm looking down and I'm thinking I'm walking in a bunch of snakes. And I'm like, I hate snakes. I'm like Indiana Jones, like, oh God, I hate snakes. Ah! I'm sitting here like about to freaking panic. And then something in me was just like, you took a drug. Oh, so I bend down, I go to
Mhm.
grab a snake, and I recognize it's mud, and my brain settles. And
Yeah.
then I'm just banged up again, right? I'm not
Mhm.
going crazy. I speak that example because listen, remember, if you are to do some sort of psychedelic, you have taken a drug. And what do we talk about as far as the definition? It's going to change your perception, your mood, and your consciousness. Remember, your eyes don't always tell you the truth, people. Okay? So your brain has collected so much things you probably don't even recognize. It probably connected something from when you were 6 months old and you first saw a lollipop and it looked like a freaking clown's head.
Yeah.
Okay? Your brain is going to start to register those things. So that bad trip is actually just your mind processing visions. Now I'm gonna give you the most recent one because that junk big. You know I'm about to go into that
Oh
freaking
yeah, I
when
want
I
to hear
went to
about
go see the
this.
Divine Mother. Oh, people get your popcorn. So anyway, so listen, I had this situation. A friend of mine invited me to a ceremony for plant medicine from a toad medicine ceremony called it's called Bufo
Yeah.
5-MeOD. They call it the God molecule. So you guys will probably see live on this another time, but like I've been working through my relationship issues, and I realized that before this ceremony that like as much as I love women, I don't like women. Like I have had this distrust because of my experiences with like mothers of children, divorce. My mom didn't really get that. I didn't get that cuddling, nurturing thing when I was born because she was like, it was a whole thing. So anyway, so I'm dealing with this, and I go into this, and it's really like a shaman and his team. There's like when you're going into a very sacred experience, you're going to have a shaman or a leader of the experience. You're also going to have a facilitation team. Those are people that are going to do what's called hold the container for you while you go on your journey to ensure that you're safe. They're also going to call in different energies to make sure that it's clean energy to help you and to bring forth your intention. So we go through the orientation. They tell us how to do this. I'm up. I read this poem about love and healing myself. I take an inhale in this, and I'm like swallowing twice, and then I'm just like, now here's the crazy thing, right? Is Brian, you said it is the death of the ego. Now I'm dying here. I'm like, no, no. I'm like, you know what? As I think back on it, I'm thinking that I look like the old WWE when someone like a wrestler's in a headlock, like the Hulk Hogan. He's like, no, no, right, bro? Like I'm resistant. My ego, I'm not like no ego. My ego, because I've been such a people pleaser majority of my life. I had to let so many layers go. And like how they were saying to you, Brian, I was just like, here, this blind family, like, surrender. They like pat my chest, surrender. I'm like, ah. So in this space, I can remember like I'm experiencing all these separations from mothers in my line, past lives. Then when they're like surrender, there's this, oh man, bro.
Mm-hmm.
There is this love, and I like when I wrote my journal that I remember I called it a supreme connection. In Hermetic principles, they call this the all. It's everything. And everything, like Brian said before, everything is connected. And this divine mother that came in this space loved me up, bro. And I remember coming out of it, and I knew someone was holding my hand. And I wake up, and it's this one of the facilitator teams. It's a shaman's mom, gray hair, blue eyes, and like wrinkled skin, and just looks so elderly and loving, and hugged me up. And I was like, I'm sitting here crying, like, I get it now. I get it now. And it was the most beautiful experience I have experienced to date. And I say this because if there's something that you're working through, psychedelics, if in the correct or proper and secure, safe environment, may heal you quicker than years and years of therapy. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I've been working on this anger towards these mothers of children since I started going to family court years ago. I'm like, I can't stand these women.
Yeah.
Now it's like, yo, man, listen, they are who they are. How can I support them on this journey?
Yeah,
I never
I was
thought I'd get
listening yeah, I was listening to an interview about this person who she was a therapist and then she became a psychedelic therapist. And
oh,
she's like, listen, she's like, I think therapy is beneficial for you. I don't have any knock on it, but therapy is like pretend like you're in the water and you're drowning. Therapy is like someone throwing you a life preserver so you can just keep your head above water, but you're still in the water. It doesn't get you out of the ocean.
yep.
Doing the psychedelics, it pulls you out of the ocean. You have a warm blanket around you. You're drinking a cup of tea, and you're just surrounded by love. He's like, it just gets to the root of the problem really quick. He's like, and I've
Yeah.
heard this plenty of times, and I've experienced it. It's like one session of psychedelics, like with controlled, when you're with somebody, is like 25 years of therapy.
Bro.
it gets right to the root of the problem. And I think what you were talking about before was like when people have bad trips, like if you have a type A personality,
Yeah.
this is probably not the best approach you should take. You should probably not get this psychedelics because with psychedelics, it's an intelligent molecule. It
Yes.
goes where it needs to go. So even if you go into your psychedelic journey and you have intentions like, oh, I want to be more grateful, I want to do this, it'd be like, yeah, okay, we'll work on that next time. But now we're going to start talking about your trauma that you had when you were a kid.
Yeah.
And and the more you resist it, the more it pushes right in front of your face and it
Yes.
magnifies it until you're finally like, all right, fuck it. Okay, let's deal with this.
Yep.
That's when people start having bad trips. So you got to go in there with the intention is like, hey, listen, whatever happens, it happens. And you have to be strong. You have to be mentally, emotionally strong and be like, hey, listen, this is gonna benefit me. It
Yeah.
might suck for a couple of hours, but it's gonna eventually end, and I'm gonna leave there with the tools I need to become a better overall person, more spiritually. It's a spiritual medicine, and
Really is, bro.
when you have medicine that affects your spirituality in a positive way, it's impossible not to get more mental benefits out of it. It's impossible not to get more emotional benefits out of it. It's
Yeah.
almost impossible not to be in a physiological state, even aesthetically looking better. Every your muscles and your aesthetic organism that your aesthetic, skin suit that you wear, it's basically based on your spirituality. It's based on your mental and emotional habits or
Right.
well-being, I should say. You know?
Man, check, 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 and check, brother. You hit on so many freaking tip top points, Brian. And a lot of what I was hearing are what are the precautions or what are the things to really note before you go into this into a psychedelic experience. I heard you say if you're a type A personality, be on the lookout, be on the watch, because there's a
Bipolar. Stay away
yeah,
if you're
bipolar.
bipolar. Be very careful. Be very careful.
Very careful. And again, if you're going into this type of experience, and especially if you're going into this with someone that knows the medicine, knows the psychedelic that you're working with, they're 9.99 times out of 10, they're going to be checking in with you like, hey, what kind of medications are you on? Let's talk about this. What's this? Because they want to know what's the situation and if this is the right thing for you to do. Okay. Remember, the psychedelics, this isn't just about going out on Saturday night and freaking hitting the limelight. Does that still exist? I don't know. But hitting the limelight and freaking getting all banged up on some loopy loop shit and like dancing to music until 7 o'clock in the morning, man.
Yeah.
This is not this. This is not that kind of party. So, and I also heard you talk about really, for lack of a better term, knowing yourself, having a strong mind. When I tell people about that experience at Augur, they're like, yo, thank God you had a strong mind, bro, because you could have been a goner. So the strong mind's being able to be like, okay, hold on, I took a drug, brain, just like chill, let me breathe. Whew, oh, that's my heartbeat. Oh, yeah, okay, I'm alive. You know what I mean? Like you gotta have a strong mind. You get to know yourself. And beyond it, I think another, and I think you really touched on this is being intentional with it, right? There's an intention that you can have in a psychedelic experience, very much like a shaman experience or a meditation. And I think it's key to note, like while you may have an intention, Brian, you hit on the head. The medicine is intelligent.
Yeah.
It's just, and it's like, and the energetics is intelligent. This is another thing I want to highlight, kind of off on a small tangent. The frequency and the energetics that we have in our bodies, we have no clue as to how potent and impressionable they are and influential they are. There's body, like, people don't teach about this, but there's bodies and frequencies and there's realms. And most of the times these psychedelics will provide you to access to other realms that are beyond the physical.
Mhm.
Okay. No one talks about that because they don't want you to know about it. Yet at the same time, like I'm sitting here in a physical form, and on these outsides of me that you're unable to see, I have other bodies.
Yeah.
Me configuring my brain systems and my brain pathways on these psychedelics will open up different realms.
Sure.
So it's going to bring up past lives, trauma, your greatness, your sovereignty. It's gonna bring sadness. It's gonna bring all those things that are blocking you from the one, the all. will come up. Okay. It will rinse and reset your ass like you're in a dishwasher.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to talk to Bree, like, cause bro, I'm so happy we're talking about this.
Oh, I love it, man.
I
Yeah.
love this, bro. Like I'm like that clenched up my clenched up butt cheeks before freaking relaxed. Now I can just fucking I can chill. I was getting tense. I was like, do we
Yeah.
want to talk about this? Ugh.
Yeah.
But bro, I think it's important. I think especially if it's controlled. I wanna say one thing that the facilitator said to me, which I thought was so beautiful. Especially I like you and I've talked about this, like just indigenous populations and tribes from thousands and tens of thousands of years ago. They just operated on such a different plane, and I think they're more connected.
Oh,
One of the things that the facilitator of my experience said, he said when in this tribe that produced this ME 5-MeO-D, he said they're in their tribe, the 13-year-olds, very similar to like a bar or bat mitzvah, they would take the medicine because it was their time, like in their young stages, it was a time for them to reset to begin their journey to adulthood. If you
yeah.
think about it, that's a lot of times like what psychedelics is. Like we talked before about a hero's journey. Sometimes the hero's journey is is contained in a psychedelic experience. You take the psychedelic, you're coming out of your world.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a mentor, which is like freaking spirit guide or maybe a power animal like a rabbit, and they're gonna take you through these trials and these situations you may have had in life. You may cry, get some snot bubbles, laugh,
Mhm.
get angry, whatever, and it's gonna get you to bring up that emotion so you come out of that journey something and someone different, man.
Yeah,
So
when I was in
yeah,
Colombia, and the shaman, he had two kids. One was a 6-year-old girl, and the other one was like a 7-year-old boy. They were doing a little bit of ayahuasca with us, and to me, I was like blown away. I was like, "What?" Like,
yeah,
and he's like, you think people were born with no issues? Like this is like generational trauma. People from past lives. You're bringing stuff over. They don't. I don't give them enough where they start vomiting all over the place, but I give them enough that they can start understanding the issues that they have and they can start working through it. And these kids were some of the most, all kids are beautiful, but these kids
yeah.
just had a spirit about it. Like it's almost like tangible. You can like touch their spirit. It's crazy how like it was just a different way of living. They were just like always smiling. I never heard these kids cry once. And it was just like, and I was out there for like 4 or 5 days with them. But it was beautiful, man. But I was like blown away. I was like, you're giving a 6-year-old kid ayahuasca? He's like, yeah, they just have beautiful dreams and they deal with some stuff and that's it. And I was like, okay. For the
Dude,
record, I would never give my kid a shot of ayahuasca, but
dude.
that's different places and different times.
Different place, different time, man. I swear to God,
Yeah,
if I even suggested that for my kids, I'd never even be able to
exactly.
speak
You'd
their
have
name again.
yeah,
But
people knocking at your door, taking your kids away, child
bruh,
protective.
man,
Yeah,
Child Protective Services,
yeah,
come on in.
yeah.
Um, I think, brother, thank you so much for mentioning that. Different place, different time. Because again, in the US, and Brian, you know how we do, man. And people that are listening to us, you know how we are. People that are just tuning in for the first time, about to explain to you, like our intention here is to provide you with insight as to tools for your highest good, for your highest healing, your highest health and well-being. Psychedelics is becoming more of the mainstream as far as helping people address our issues. And a lot of times our issues are in our tissues. And they can reside in our fascia, they can reside in our mindset, our memories. We could smell something and get activated to a certain circumstances or see something get activated. Psychedelics are a way for us to rewire those things. And while in this country, it may be poo-pooed upon because of, you depending on who you ask, it could be a slew of reasons why people will put it down in this country.
Yeah.
Yet at the same time, people are waking up to the benefits that it can provide. And we
Yeah.
hope that we'll be able to provide some insights as to some things that could benefit you, or maybe
Yeah,
not.
the media has a big influence on how the rest of the people feel about something. You got to understand something like about 99% of people, they are basically just robots.
Yeah.
They don't know how, they can't think for themselves. There was a great book on a psychologist who was saying an average male over I'm sorry, an average person over the age of 40 has the mental um state, emotional state of a 12-year-old. About
Mhm.
90% of us are like that. We just can't think for ourselves. We grew up just listening to what media is, our family, our tribe, and everything like that.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to influence us. So we talked about, like how, Nixon put it as a class one drug back in the day. Like in the DARE program with the propaganda. I'm not saying drugs are good. I mean, probably some benefits to it, but you can't classify a psychedelic as the same thing as a drug. It's a big difference, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people nowadays, like, listen, like people are getting fed up. I said even back in the day, like 20 years ago, even though I didn't smoke weed, but I didn't think nothing. I was like, there's nothing wrong with it. Nobody, when people are around, I grew up in an alcoholic environment. Like, well, my mom didn't drink. My dad was an abusive alcoholic. And I know alcohol I always put together with physical violence and being angry all the time. I've never seen anybody smoke weed and start throwing punches. I mean, rare, that doesn't happen. Everyone's just chill. Should you be operating a vehicle at the time? Probably not. But you can't tell me. And then you look at like cigarettes, that kills more people than anything, but the government still puts it out there because they're making money on it. But I just knew it, going back to my weed comment, I knew eventually it was going to be legal. It was just a way the government needs to find a way how to regulate it and how to make money off it. Same thing with psychedelics. People are getting sick. These SSRIs out there, these antidepressants, they don't do anything. I mean, I shouldn't say they don't do anything. I'm sure they help some people out, but there's statistics out there. I just read something before, like 15% of people that are on an SSRI actually become more depressive, more depressed. People have more anxiety. It has so many side effects like nausea, vomiting, headaches, drowsiness, dry mouth, dizziness, sexual problems. It lowers your testosterone. And like again, like it's the people are getting fed up. Like they need something better. And
Yeah.
psychedelics, they will be legal within the next 10 to 15 years.
I
Right.
agree.
There's a lot of research right now with Harvard
Yeah.
Medical School, John Hopkins, like all these major universities, and they're seeing amazing benefits of it. They're just trying to figure out a way how to tax us on it and how to make
Yep.
money.
Yep.
That's it. That's all it comes down to. And it will be legal because people, it helps people. It helps people.
And you know what, Brian? Thank you for bringing that up, man, because I agree with you on that, man. I remember back in the day, like in my 20s, people saying one day weed is gonna be legal, and I was like, man, get your ass out of here. They ain't never gonna freaking make this legal unless they can make money on it. And guess what?
Yeah.
It's legal
Yeah.
in New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
And I think that when I started seeing more of these studies with psychedelics, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, it's okay. It's out, it's about to be on the way. It's about to be on the way. So listen, we're ahead of the curve right here, man. We're one of the part of the what do they call it, newfound frontier, where we're talking about this because I think it's if you are experiencing some very difficult things in life that you've been battling with for a long time, and you're working with a therapist, maybe you broach the topic of like, or you look up some studies and see what's there and start to bring it to your counsel, your therapist, or what have you. And if you decide to do something like this, like go with someone that is trusted. So that means it may be a referral from a friend, maybe your therapist. A lot of these people are out here that can support you and provide a safe and secure environment for you to have these psychedelic experiences and heal from them. So really take your time, really think about it. This is something for you. Brian mentioned before, know yourself before you start to go on these trips. Okay. If you have not done any self-work, my recommendation, don't even bother, man. Start going to some groups like therapy, like start at least like start to be aware of your issues. Because if they come up, man, in a psychedelic ceremony, it's gonna be free of a filter.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, if somebody were to tell me like, hey, how do I start off on it? What I would recommend, and I'm not an expert into it whatsoever, but my 2 cents, and I got this from somebody. He's like, start off with like mushrooms because
yeah,
it's
good
very
call.
easy. Um, there's a couple different levels of it, like 5 grams, like it's basically called like the God dose, right? 3.5 is like 3.2 to 3.5 is like a heavy dose. I tell people start off with like 2 grams. You're not going to get like the hallucinating experience out of it. It's going to make you feel like you're on probably your fourth glass of wine, and
Yeah.
you're going to feel good inside your body. And what that does, it gives you the confidence to go a little deeper next time. So maybe next time you do 2.5, then you go maybe to 3 grams and kind of work your way up.
Yeah.
Just don't jump in like what I did and do DMT and LSD back to back days for your first month.
God damn, yo, Brian
I
went
don't
in. He
regret
was
it.
like,
I was around an amazing shaman. I was around a lot of loved people, so I felt safe the whole time. But that's the way I would start off with my psychedelic journey. Start off with nice and slow, then kind of work your way up. And each psychedelic, it offers a different experience.
yeah, man, big time,
So do
big
your
time.
research, and that's what I got to say about that.
And that's all we got to say about that. Hey, listen, we wanted to make sure that we did as we wanted to come from our experiences and come from a neutral perspective. I personally favor psychedelics as a way to really address things that may be difficult to address. And I recognize that it may not be for everyone for a lot of different reasons. Our thing is, as everything, do your research, really check in with yourself, what aligns, what fits. If you have any questions around this, while we're far from being experts, we're going based on our personal experiences and what we've researched. We are whatever information we have is yours. So if you have questions, leave it in the comments. You can always also reach us at more than black or white at gmail.com. So tap in. So happy that we were able to talk about this in this space and environment. And let us know what questions you have. Put it in, like, share, and subscribe. Be any last words about the goody good
No,
psychedelics?
man, no. I said everything I think I need to say about it.
Man, bro. Yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm like, yo, do I have any microdose mushrooms?
Yeah,
No.
I'm ready for a retreat, man. I'm
Yeah,
ready.
bruh, it's time, bruh.
Yeah,
Yo, listen, when you get back, yeah, we're gonna have to figure something out.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So listen, stay tuned, man. Bless up. Thank you. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. You can catch the old episodes there. You can always catch us at YouTube with the freshy fresh and the newest stuff. And listen, like, share. You like this comment, you like this topic, get a listen party, get a watch party with your friends. All the smart TVs will play YouTube so you can freaking have us up on the thing, sip on some wine, maybe smoke a J, and listen to this conversation and go from there, man. All right. So
That's
bless
it.
up, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Until next
I
time.
appreciate you all. Thank you.
Peace.